Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. I've got breaking news happening at the NHS, and it's not good in regards to the whole Palantir and FTP contract saga. So it just came out that the UK government has refused the NHS's plea for £1 billion, and this is for a bailout to cover the cost of the strikes that just happened recently. So this is costing NHS England a huge shortfall, reallocating around £800 million in funds with no help from the Treasury or the Department of Health. So meaning that they have to cover this themselves with their existing budget. So with none of it coming from these other government entities, this is what's forcing NHS England to reallocate these funds that have been on their books, which is the major concern to me when it comes to Palantir investors. The NHS has been in talks to try to get these funds for months, with some expectations that they wouldn't have to cover the shortfall, at least all of it, due to the strikes and them having to take care of this, but this isn't the case at all with this rejection of the bailout. Now, here's the scary part for Palantir investors. The £600 million out of that $800 million is from NHS England repurposing money earmarked for several improvement initiatives. Now, if this is in regards to technology, I wouldn't be surprised, and considering the high visibility of the FTP contract, there's no way that this wouldn't at least be talked about or be on the table in either reducing funding or delaying or getting scrapped altogether, or even some existing contracts with Palantir and renewals at that point. At this point, with all the flack Palantir seems to be getting, I wouldn't be surprised at this at all with the extra added pressures. Now, the other £200 million, for those wondering, it is allocated from their traditional winter crisis of funds, and that's set aside seasonally for this normally. Now, potential reasons that they think the bailout was rejected is because they want to allocate these funds towards tax cuts instead. And with some of those in the public and government viewing the NHS as an endless money pit, I can see why those wanting visibility and helping out the people would choose something like tax cuts, especially with the year end and having a general election coming up soon. So I'm not saying this is the truth, but common sense would tie these together, and I would make that assumption. And then this also came from a senior NHS figure to themselves that giving an NHS an extra billion would be seen as just good use of money, not being actually the case, and it would just be a money pit. Now, the announcement from NHS England is going to be distributed amongst their 42 integrated care systems, or ICS, which are the regional groupings of trust under them, because a lot of them are facing overspending shortfalls, all with the issues of the strikes as well that's exacerbating it. So just cuts and money issues altogether from this public is difficult for Palantir in regards to the contract. Now, we don't know for sure if this will be a reason or just one of many reasons to continue making this contract delayed, or if it even is a factor, but I definitely wouldn't ignore this information because it adds up to the game of politics here and gives you that full picture. And to be honest, this can still be a lot of speculation because we were just given this general layout here that they are allocating the funds and cutting it from several improvement initiatives. So we don't know the exact reasons and the exact purpose. We don't know for sure if the tech is the one getting affected at this point, but from my personal perspective, I think the NHS and the UK as a whole can see this funding drama as more of a reason to utilize technology, or Palantir in the slightest at least, towards cost effectiveness and efficiencies. They specifically mentioned the rising costs of drugs and pharmaceuticals, and we know if supply chains can be managed by Foundry, and that's to maximize the performance of their current supply chains, why wouldn't they do that for a large, inefficient organization like the NHS who would benefit from these previous use cases? Now, I don't think anyone is going to start shouting from the rooftops to use Palantir and that they're going to save them money, because I think the patient care aspect is still the main priority of the FTP project, but it definitely was one of the business cases pointed out as a way for them to use FTP in regards to supply chains. Now, I personally think that the worst part is if we get confirmation of an actual delay or cancellation or loss of the contract, but I think it's important to note these kinds of things bring events of swirl of happening all around it, and it just creates more and more uncertainty here, and of course investors don't like that. And this also brings up a point: if they get into a contract, will this funding aspect become an issue later on as well and be an ongoing issue? It's something to keep in mind here. And I also know this news has been covered too, but this is on top of the more NHS drama from David Moore, who is in the Conservative Party in the UK. I didn't make a video on this specifically, but David spoke at UK Parliament and literally said, looks like the company who's going to win this is Palantir, and it's just the wrong company to put in charge of our precious data resource. So even if it behaved perfectly, he said, nobody would trust it. So it basically sounds like the UK is still just trying to plead their case on what to do going forward with this FTP contract. And honestly, they are just dragging their feet as much as possible. And this is from the top to the bottom. I mean, if you want to take this as good news, then it sounds like they're at least acknowledging that maybe Palantir has this in the bag and won. But that's just one point here and just a way to interpret it. But also just on another avenue for them to get flack and trying to rile up the public backlash against Palantir. So there's clearly disconnect between the trust, solutions, the actual work, and the decision makers here. It just all seems very confusing. And then when government officials are speaking about this so publicly and then calling Palantir out by name, I don't know if we should take this as an all press is good press moment or not. And he references them previously publicly failed attempts to deal with tying all their data together, not with Palantir, of course, but with these other projects. So just the general population dealing with privacy and data. Now, at this point, with all the increased media coming out regarding the NHS FTP contract, I know it makes it that much more crucial for Palantir to perform and not cave under pressure, because implementing a solution like theirs would enact real change here, and it's for the good of the health of actual people. And I'll leave it up to you to decide how important this is for the thesis of Palantir. But I'm more in the boat of Palantir is going to be good no matter what, who signs on, and they have great clients already in the healthcare space. And it's the NHS losses, honestly, if they decide to keep patients sicker and waiting longer and making things more cumbersome for patients and for providers. The voters will get exactly what they asked for, of course, and if this is what they truly want, then who's us to get in the way of that? And this comes with the territory of working with government clients. Politics always has a hand in it, and I trust Palantir with their decades of operations in the space to know how it is truly running in the background, but on the outside, us public investors really only see what's being made public, and it's this whole circus show happening. Now, my speculation on what the next steps actually are. So we just had that recent delay here to the mid-November timeframe. However, I honestly do not expect a final decision by then. I think the NHS is just trying to bide their time and just keep delaying and delaying until they can. They can always go under the ruse that they're just trying to get the public on board here. Now, what's actually going to happen in the end and with the final decision, we have no idea, honestly, at this point. And if someone says they won, maybe it's an insider source, but it's still something that we would take with a grain of salt until we get an actual public disclosure of them winning. So I think it's best as investors, maybe you just try not to put this into your modeling here and no under assumptions, or maybe you just put it as a risk that it has to be pushed off even later, that they're going to win a contract here. So it may even be falling way later into 2024. We just don't know yet. So at this point, I don't want to become too invested in this contract and making it that much important for Palantir. Like I said, I think Palantir is going to be a great company and their products are going to do well regardless if they win this contract. It's just unfortunate, though, that this governing body is not going to be able to take advantage of the things they can do for their population. Now, if we see this doing very well in the United States, it may just create more use cases here, or maybe there's another country that wants to take a chance on Palantir at a huge level like the NHS, or at least something similar to that where it's a national healthcare system. If they can keep building up use cases and have other examples there, it may just provide a better sales pitch for them to get into the NHS. However, we always know politics can always be a play here.